Okay, welcome everyone to the February 2026 All Hands meeting for Whole Washington. Um, as always, these All Hands meetings are recorded and posted to YouTube. So feel free to check us out, subscribe. It's a great way, if you can't attend these meetings, you can still see what's going on. And there's lots of other really great and informative videos posted to YouTube all the time. Um, so check us out there. Uh, Quick introduction for the organization, for those who may be new. We are a nonpartisan 501c4/501c3 political and charitable nonprofit. The C3 part is something we've been working on for a long time and still have a ways to go. But we will ultimately have both of these things, which come with different benefits and capabilities. We are the largest universal health care advocacy organization in Washington. We're the authors of the Washington Health Trust, which is currently the only universal health care bill in the legislature, but we're also the only universal health care group that has been actively building towards a ballot initiative campaign to bring this to the voters if the legislature refuses to move on it. And then we're part of a wider coalition called Healthcare is a Human Right Washington, where we collaborate with many other really wonderful organizations who also care very much about this issue. My name is Andre Stackhouse. I'm the executive director of Whole Washington. I live in Seattle near Green Lake. You can get in touch with me anytime you like. My email is just andre@wholewashington.org. And you can always use my booking link, cal.com/public-stackhouse, to set up a one-on-one with me. And that is something I would love to do, especially if you're new to the organization or having a hard time figuring out exactly how to settle into it. I'm always happy to have a one-on-one and help direct you towards the right person to talk to or the right project to work on. There is a place for everyone at Whole Washington. Um, we always have a lot of stuff going on. We're as busy as ever. So we keep a very active events calendar, wholewashington.org/events. And this is just some of the things that we have going on this month. So first thing, and some of these we'll talk about a little bit more, but tomorrow, 10:30 a.m., the Health and Long-Term Care Committee in the Senate has a meeting, and two of our bills are going to have a what's called an executive session. And what that means is basically we'll know early tomorrow whether or not our bills will advance to the next stage of the process. Um, we also have a data and tech team that meets monthly on the first Friday of the month, which means that this Friday is the next meeting. So if you are a tech-oriented person, feel free to drop into that monthly meeting. We also have this hands-off Medicare and Medicaid event in Spokane, and we always try to have events regionally across the state. So this is just one of those. Actually, 2 days later, on the 8th, the Whatcom County team will have their monthly meetup at the Stones Throw Brewery, and we have lots of teams at different levels of activity, but we try to have monthly meetups for our local teams. There's also a rally. So WFSE stands for Washington Federation of State Employees. That represents public workers in Washington. They are a coalition partner of ours, and they are having a rally for revenue in Olympia at the Capitol on the 10th. Revenue is very, very important to universal health care. There is no universal health care without revenue reform, and in our opinion, it should be progressive revenue reform. And then last, for this set of events that we're highlighting, is the Coalition Labor Table monthly meeting. So this is again through our Healthcare as a Human Right Coalition partners.
Mhm.
They have a monthly labor table meeting. So especially if you are a union member or you are interested in union organizing, please do join one of the labor tables. You will meet a lot of really wonderful people connected in the labor movement. Um, I don't have a ton of updates from the board of directors. They do meet every month on the third Thursday from noon to 2. The next meeting is the 19th. Um, like we've been saying, month over month, we are recruiting an assistant secretary. So if that is something you're interested in, go to wholewashington.org/apply and check out the details. And maybe this is something that you would like to do in order to get a little deeper in the organization. Um, But the biggest thing going on with the board and there's a lot to figure out still, but as I mentioned, we are working on getting our 501(c)(3) status. We'll be building a team around it. We're still working on exactly the details of what this team does and how it is structured. But what you can know today is that we are going to be fiscally hosted by Sustainable Seattle, which means that our 501(c)(3) will technically be a subsidiary of Sustainable Seattle. And what that means is they're going to take a percentage of our donations, but they're going to take care of all of the compliance and overhead, which is really great for us because it means we get to focus on our organizing. And the biggest thing that this is going to do for us is give us access to more fundraising opportunities. So, employer matching programs, um, a lot of the large employers in the state, and some of the ones that I checked on, Microsoft, Amazon, Starbucks, Boeing, but very well could be one of your employers as well. Um, they often have these programs where, as an employee, you can make a charitable donation and then your employer will match that donation. And they don't usually do that for political nonprofits, but for a 501(c)(3) charitable nonprofit, they usually will. So very soon we should be able to get set up for employer matching programs, and that's something that you can help us get set up at your employer. The other thing is we'll be eligible for a lot of grants that we're not
What do
currently
you think
eligible
you're
for.
doing?
So through 501(c)(3s, um, and one organization that we have looked at getting grants through is the Inatai Foundation. Um, it also will enable us to collect tax-deductible donations. Certain donors, especially large donors, often prefer to make a tax-deductible donation. And then we'll have access to a lot of nonprofit discounts. So, for instance, right now we're paying for a suite of productivity software, and we may be able to get a lot of that for free through Google Workspace because Google offers that for free to charitable nonprofits. So, if you're looking to get more involved, there is a channel in our Slack, 501(c)(3) coordination.
Oh, yeah,
Go
you
ahead and
can.
join that channel, and that will allow you to get the latest updates on what's going on with this and get involved. Um, and we do have a meeting with Sustainable Seattle on Wednesday, so we should have a better idea of some of what comes next after that meeting slash training. Wow, we still have a lot of people coming in. I'm going to just go ahead and admit them. We are up to 35, 36 people or so. So thank you again, everyone, for being here. Quick fundraising update, and I'd like to thank our assistant treasurer, Cara, for compiling these numbers and Thomas for putting the slide together. Um, but um, our fundraising always kind of has these moments where it's flat and then moments where it has spikes. And right now we're kind of in the middle of that. So you can see that kind of getting a small bump for the beginning of the year, up a small number of individual donors. So from 128 in December up to 132 in January, picked up a couple, keeping us solid at a $38 average donation. I just want to note that $38 as an average donation is higher than it has been traditionally. So it's great to see people upping their donation size. And you can see that we're a little over 100 to 150 or so dollars in January compared to December. So it looks like, basically what happened this month is we had a few extra individual donations come in. So nothing groundbreaking for the month of January, but it's good to see that after we had a really solid 2025, that the trend continues upwards. Um, and we are looking to raise a lot more money in 2026 than even 2025. So um, anything that we can do to keep this trajectory moving upwards. If you want to get more involved, and this is an area where, especially if you have experience, especially if you have connections, or even if you just want to show up and help, we could really use some additional capacity here. So the next meeting is on the 11th at 4 p.m. That team meets every 2 weeks, and any level of experience is incredibly appreciated on this team. Okay, and then moving into some team updates, and I believe the first one is social media. I'll go ahead and hand it to Thomas.
Okay, hello. I just want to point out on that last slide, I think January had some math problems in it. So if you thought that it, it was not adding up right, that was true. Uh, But as far as social media goes, we're putting out daily videos and content about our new bills, healthcare news, and updates for our organization. We are now posting across 4 platforms for videos: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We meet every other week. Our next meeting is going to be not this week, but next week on Wednesdays. We meet at noon. You can follow us, subscribe, or comment on your favorite platform. Better yet, do it on all of the platforms. That would be very helpful. And right now, our content is dominated by the testimonies that so many of us gave. Me, Alexa, Andre, and one of our SNAP students are who we put up so far. And yes, all the testimonies are great. And we have dozens more to go.
Cool. And then on the communications team, and I'm happy to hand this off to Rhonda, unless you want me to give it. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at this, but our comms team continues to do some great work.
No, I'm here. I'm here, Andre.
Hey, Rhonda.
Hey everyone, Rhonda Gilligan. Yeah, so we have been mostly working, as everyone else has, on all of the two bills communications. So we've built a new blog page as a landing for social media, emails, and other messaging around our push to get sign-ins, Sign In Pro. Um, we've been working with the graphics team to create some of these wonderful infographics that you see in front of you. Um, I hadn't seen the one on the left myself. That's very cool. The 5 bills or 6 bills that we were promoting. So we're working hard to create messaging strategies, pulling together what our primary messages are, what our um, how we want to explain them, because that's kind of hard sometimes with these very complex and complicated political stuff. And that's what you'll see in emails and text messages, the newsletter, and the website.
Thank you, Rhonda. Yeah, and our comms team is one of our most active teams, does meet weekly on Tuesdays. And I just want to say, this has been an incredibly fast-moving legislative session with a lot of different bills. Sometimes the updates come very quickly, and so we have really learned a lot about how to communicate and then organize action around a very, very fast-paced legislative schedule. And it's been really wonderful to have the comms team and the graphics team and the social media team all working together on this. And I think we're only going to continue to get better at it. Um, Data and tech team. Uh, Thomas, are you the best person to give this update this month? Or Andy? Andy, you're here.
Yeah, I can do it. I can give the update.
Please.
So thanks to everybody who's been coming to our stand-ups and running through our Taiga board. We don't know that this is our final product. We started using this one just so we could start organizing our tasks, and it's been pretty useful. And to have weekly touch points and to go through them, we really appreciate all of our volunteers who spend time and put in effort on this. So thank you so much for coming. For those of you worried or don't want to feel a lot of pressure, please, we are a low pressure but very supportive group of volunteers trying to work together to get these bills as supported as possible. So we have we have this meeting on the weeks that we don't have our big data and tech meeting. So the data and tech meeting is this Friday at 10:30. But we are on the rest of them, they'll be at 10 o'clock. So thank you all for this. We're continuing to make progress and we appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Oh, it's not a Jira board, it's a Taiga board, but it's like a Jira board. So there you go.
All right. So on this one, I think we don't have a ton of updates other than that we are always building powerful teams, and we are trying to build those not just statewide, but also in individual communities. I don't know that I've updated this map. There could have been some progress on it. It's always changing a little bit. But the point is, um, check the website to see if there is, an event or a coordinator in your county. And if not, it's something that you are encouraged to help us get started. It really doesn't have to be that intimidating. In fact, usually what we do is if a team is forming, we just start with a Zoom meeting and we have a big mailing list. So if you're able to pick a time that works for you, we can promote it. And we just start with whatever we start with. It could be 2 or 3 people, it could be 10. But once we have that core group together, we can start turning it into a county team. You can see these are some of the other teams that we have. So see what's available, check the calendar. If something jumps out at you, you're encouraged to just check it out. And you don't typically need to have any particular experience or background. And you're always welcome to just be a fly on the wall, and you'll kind of figure out whether or not there are ways that you are interested in getting more involved from there. But I think the team that has a lot to announce this month and some really exciting stuff is the legislative team. So we have had a legislative team that's been meeting a lot, carrying a lot of really important policy development, staying on top of a really challenging legislative calendar. Just to remind folks, the start of the 2026 legislative session was the 12th of January, and then it ends on March 12th. And so it's only a 60-day session, but it really does require you to be very plugged in. And these are some photos. We've been in Olympia a lot, more than any other year. I think we've had whole Washington people physically in Olympia, and we've done, rallies. We've done sign waving over the highway. We've met with legislators in their offices, and there's really a lot to do there. In fact, there was one day where me and Andy and Lizzie just postered the downtown. So we're trying to be very visible in Olympia, and it seems to be paying off. Folks may be familiar with the Take Action Network. This is a tool to kind of help coordinate legislative action and keep track of bills. Actually, the most useful thing is its bill tracker, at least so far, but we're still learning how to use it. So if you're the sort of person who is familiar with Take Action Network, just know that whole Washington is on there, and you can kind of see what we're tracking and get involved in it right away. We should have more in general. We should get better at using this tool and may incorporate it more into our work. But for now, just know that it exists. And then if you just want to track our legislative priorities on the website, we have a page, wholewashington.org/bills. And so that's where you can see kind of the full set of bills that we have flagged as worth tracking this year. Some of them we developed, some of them we co-developed with partners, and then others are just other bills that we see value in. And so we try to keep this page pretty up to date, and this should be the best way to know things that you can do next in order to advance universal health care in the state legislature. So for the rest, at least for a good portion of the content that I have left here, I wanted to give kind of an overview of legislative terms and the legislative process to make it a bit more accessible to people. For a lot of folks, this may be review, and for others, this may be really valuable stuff. So bills are usually started, they have a number, but they usually start with SB or HB. That just stands for Senate bill or House bill. There are a couple other types of bills that you should know about. So SJM, Senate Joint Memorial, that's actually more of a resolution. It doesn't actually change the law, but it otherwise operates very much like a bill. And then SJR, Senate Joint Resolution, that's a constitutional amendment. And they do usually start in the Senate, but I do think there are House versions of those as well. There's also the concept of a sponsor. And so basically the legislator who introduces a bill is usually called the bill's sponsor or its prime sponsor. And then a co-sponsor is another legislator who basically adds their name to that bill to indicate that they support it. Sometimes sponsor and co-sponsor may be used interchangeably. The legislative process is more complicated than I would probably like it to be, but this is kind of a 10-point breakdown of it. So bills start as being pre-filed before the session begins. Typically in the month of December, bills can be pre-filed, and that means that they will be introduced into the next session, but they can also be filed at any time. So if you're not early, right, a legislator can basically file a bill at any time during session. They collect co-sponsors for the first 24 hours after they've been introduced, and then they have to go to committee. So before a bill can actually get voted on, it needs to go through different committees. Committees have chairs, and they determine which bills are going to get a vote or not. And then they also schedule it for a hearing. So before it gets voted on in committee, it gets a hearing. That's where a lot of these public testimonies happen. So they're called public hearings. They usually have space for people to testify in writing, in person, or over Zoom. And then the chair will decide if the bill gets an executive session, and that is where the bill will actually get voted on by that committee. After it makes it through all of its committees, it goes to a floor vote, and that's where the entire House or Senate will vote on it. It needs a majority. And so then it goes through the first chamber, right? So if it's introduced in the House, that's its first chamber. If it starts in the Senate, that's the first chamber. But basically, it gets a floor vote, and if it gets a majority, it's done with that chamber, and then it's going to repeat that process in the opposite chamber. So it needs to go through the House and the Senate, and then it goes to the governor, where it will be either signed into law or vetoed. So that's the process. A little bit of extra detail on the committee process. So usually a bill starts in policy committee. And so we're a healthcare organization, which means that we focus on the House Healthcare and Wellness Committee or the Senate Health and Long-Term Care Committee. And then there is the Financial Committee, which in the Senate is the Ways and Means Committee. In the House, it's the House Finance Committee. So if a bill costs money, it needs to do the Financial Committee. If it does not cost money, it can usually skip the Financial Committee. But all bills will go through the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee basically is supposed to be a very procedural committee. It's not so much based on the judgment or the politics of the members, but really they're just reviewing the process to make sure everything has been done according to the legislative rules and the law and the process. Rules will determine if the bill moves on to the floor, and then it will be the Speaker of the House or the head of the Senate, who is actually the Lieutenant Governor, who then takes everything that makes it through rules and determines this is the bills that are going to get voted on today versus a different day. So it needs to be scheduled for a floor vote. Once it clears that floor vote, it moves on to the opposite chamber and repeats this process. So that will help you hopefully get a slightly better sense on the updates on our bills. So these are all bills that Whole Washington has played a key role in developing. The first one that folks are most familiar with probably is the Washington Health Trust. We've carried it since 2019. It's never gotten a through committee. It's never gotten a public hearing. And so this bill, we're very proud because we do believe it is the best way to achieve universal health care in Washington. But we didn't want to just be stuck on one bill. And so that's why we started to introduce bills to help make progress without doing the whole thing in one giant bill. So in 2022, we introduced the resolution Joint Memorial 8004, which basically was a resolution requesting that we get federal waivers and federal funding so that our state can achieve universal health care. We passed that in 2025. And then in 2026, we worked with a group of stakeholders and developed 5 new bills. There is 5947, which is a universal health care trigger bill. 8206, which is a constitutional amendment to create a right to health care in Washington. 5955, which would deprivatize our state's Medicaid program, also known as Apple Health. 5946 increases the eligibility for Apple Health. And 5948 creates deadlines and deliverables for our state's Universal Healthcare Commission. So these are sort of the most whole Washington bills that we were working on in 2026. One reason I included Joint Memorial 8004 is to help people kind of understand ways that legislation can get developed. So when 8004 was first introduced in 2022. A lot of people said, what is the point of this? It's just a resolution. It doesn't actually get anyone healthcare. And what's cool is we passed this in 2025, and this bill effectively became 5947. So we took what was resolved in this bill and turned it into an actual law. And so that is a way for us to kind of take something as a resolution, which is easier and doesn't cost any money. And if we are able to prove that we have the votes for it and we have the public support for it, we can start to develop these things into actual legislation. And so, like I said, 2 of our bills developed with those stakeholders are making great progress. Joint Resolution 8206, that constitutional protection for healthcare for all Washingtonians, and then 5947, a trigger bill. So what that basically means is if federal legislation is passed or we receive those federal waivers, Washington will immediately begin creating a universal healthcare program. So both of these bills, I think one of the reasons that they made progress this year is that they didn't cost the state any money. They really are more universal healthcare in the future, or universal healthcare based on future action. But this is still a way for us to make progress in a year where the state doesn't have a lot of funding to expand actual healthcare programs. They're scheduled for executive session tomorrow at 10:30 in the Health and Long-Term Care Committee. So we should know by that afternoon if they're going to make it on to rules. And our expectation right now is that they will. And then I just wanted to flag a couple other bills that are moving this session and making really great progress. So Joint Memorial 8002 is a Medicare deprivatization resolution. This one is the farthest along. It's already made it all the way through the Senate. It's in the House. It has until the 25th to get a hearing in its policy committee. 5993 is a bill that would basically make it so that medical debt would not be able to have interest on it if it goes to collections. And so eventually we'd like to see all medical debt eliminated in Washington, but this at least reduces interest on medical debts. And that needs to make that's made it through rules. It needs to get a vote on the Senate floor by the 17th. These 2 bills, they're companion bills, 2073 and 5808. This is basically a tax on insurance companies if they hold a significant surplus of money, more than they need to actually make their payouts to patients. And so that is a bill that would basically tax those excess reserves and then fund healthcare. And that needs to clear the Rules Committee by the 17th. And then the last one, what we call it a freeloader tax. So basically it's a tax on employers who don't provide healthcare to their employees and instead have those employees get their coverage through Medicaid. And so if those employers are basically putting people onto Medicaid and they're not paying into Medicaid, this bill would tax them to help fund Medicaid. And that one has gotten its policy committee hearing, but it needs an executive session by the 9th. So this is the one out of all of these bills that is looking, the most up in the air whether or not it continues to advance. But that's basically our legislative update and our updates for January of this year. And with the time we have left, happy to answer questions and have some discussion. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording first, and then we can talk amongst ourselves.